you for joining us today. I am Andra Hedden, and this is The Talk Show. Today, I am joined by Mr. Matt Solomon. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Good to see you, as always. If you don't know Matt, you absolutely should know Matt. He is a game changer in the channel, and currently he is the Vice President of Business Development at Kaseya. He has a ton of experience, obviously, in the channel, but today is going to be an interesting hot topic that we're digging into, which is virtual events. And more than that, we're going to really double down on how to acquire net new leads, net new partners in this era of no in-person events. So I'm pumped to talk about this today, Matt, and I'm sure you have a ton that you want to share. So get us started. I mean, what have you been doing lately? I see your name popping up all over the place. I see you involved in a bunch of virtual events. Give everyone just a quick idea of what you've been doing in the virtual realm.
Yeah. So, I mean, typically, just for people who don't know me, I'm on the road, I don't know, 50 times a year at MSP conferences. So when COVID hit, I mean, I immediately was like, oh my gosh, like what's my job? Like, what am I doing? Like, how do I get in front of MSPs? How do we, very early on, and me and you talked about this, and it's one of the reasons we did that pivot to grow, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which is, even then, me and you both recognized that there was going to be too much virtual events happening and that we had to do something that was a little different, right? To stand out in the crowd, because there was going to be so much, there was going to be virtual fatigue very quickly. And so that's where I really shifted. Was I was like, how can we be creative? And thought leadership has been kind of the biggest thing I've honed in on. So bringing in thought leaders, not just from the MSP space, but people who you may not know, but and then cybersecurity experts, obviously Magic Johnson event, that was the big one, but really been honing on that. And then also kind of like what you're doing right here, right? Trying to be creative, get yourself out there, and and find new ways to engage with an audience.
Absolutely. And even a couple of the topics that you just tagged into, we will go a little bit deeper on. So the portion of kind of assessing the situation, right? So when COVID hit, it was, what is the state of the channel right now? Which it was everyone inside their homes, wherever in the world, without any contact. So as a salesperson, right, Matt, you're going, I still have a quota to hit. I still have partners I want to get onboarded, and I got to figure out a way to get speed to market. So in the world of virtual events, I loved, one of those first ones, Pivot to Grow. It was, debunk the myth of it takes forever to plan a virtual event, because I get that a lot. How long does it take to plan a virtual event? Is it intense? Will anyone come? So talk about planning a virtual event and what it entails.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny, because the Pivot to Grow came together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had the concept of bringing in sales and marketing thought leadership really from outside the MSP space. Again, I was getting a little tired of hearing from the exact same people all the time. So I had kind of a list of people that I already knew, and then I knew you as well. And so I reached out to you and said, hey, I've got this idea, and I got a couple people, what are your thoughts? And I feel like within 48 hours, we had a flushed out event, and like you had a few other people that you brought in as well. And people were just, and these thought leaders were welcoming the opportunity to be in front of an audience. We definitely had the benefit of being one of the first, asking them to do these things virtually. But, for thought leaders, I mean, this is the only avenue right now. So a lot of people are willing to give their time. A lot of thought leaders come at a much cheaper cost if you do have to pay them. For Pivot to Grow, that we weren't paying people, but the Magic Johnson event, that they come at usually a 50% less their speaking rate. To me, it doesn't have to be Magic Johnson. It can be somebody who's more of a local. It doesn't have to be even a celebrity, but I'm just saying, like, a local person who's recognizable.
Yes.
And you team together with a law firm, an accounting firm, whatever. It's very similar to what we did, essentially.
And I think that's what I think that the one of those advantages that you were just chatting about is thinking about people that thinking about people inside and outside the space that are respected, or that will add some sort of a flavor to the conversation that's different. Right now, with everyone sitting in front of their screens, meeting after meeting, everyone just needs something interesting, and they're past the, okay, it was interesting just to get thought leadership and content. Now it's the next level. So I think one of the really cool things, I loved that concept. Obviously, we both doubled down and sorted out what could happen, and it came together so amazing. You brought some awesome talent that were just great relationships of yours. And then all of a sudden it became this event that based on the attendance, everyone was thirsty for. So I think that that was just so cool. And then the Magic Johnson one, talk a little bit about how, using and leveraging a name like that, and then talk about kind of your strategies for bringing together other vendors as well, and back to the goal of net new partners, net new lead gen. Talk through some strategies there.
Yeah, and so I think it's important before talking about the Magic event to kind of set. It doesn't have to be somebody at Magic Johnson's level. I chose it to be that. I mean, it was an idea in my head. I wanted to come out and just do something no one was really doing.
Talk to Magic Johnson.
I did want to talk to Magic, but to the earlier question, this all came together like in 48 hours. I mean, I reached out with my idea to like 12 different vendors in the community and said, "This is the idea I have. This is an opportunity for us to bring." To talk about net new, to get an audience that maybe we don't get for a dark web monitoring demo. Maybe they want to hear Magic, and it's more top of the funnel for sure.
Yeah.
But in this environment, we have to get leads, and so
keep moving, keep the momentum.
Exactly, and so that was really the focus of that. And we had thought leadership, and we had panels ahead of time. But really, for an MSP, it could be a similar concept. It doesn't have to be Magic Johnson. It also doesn't have to be a celebrity, but it could be somebody who's just locally recognized in your community as a thought leader. You could bring them in, and I mean, yeah, there's probably a little bit of a fee, not Magic's fee, but a couple thousand. But if you partner with a law firm, accounting firm, some other whatever complements you as an organization, bring them in, have them team up together, and you all benefit from it. And then the cost obviously can go down and may even be completely paid for by your partners. So there's lots of different opportunities to team up with people in your community to make a splash. And you really also have to like promote it in really fun ways. I mean, obviously you guys did an amazing job putting together videos. I mean, this most recent event that I'm doing, the cybersecurity trilogy, I created this game of what I call tag. And it was like, we're doing a $500 live drawing. I'm actually doing it later today. And I said, tag people in the MSP community who you think would also enjoy this. And for every tag, you get an extra entry. I think we're up to over 350 tags. And so the same thing can be done in your local community, and you might have the whole damn community at your event.
Absolutely. But you make it fun. And I think that's the difference too, particularly because of the scenarios that we're all sitting in. Everyone wants something to engage in. So if you're adding gamification to event recruitment, and I think, your earlier point about partnering to win, that is so underestimated, both on the vendor side of the house, as well as if you're an MSP. If you're a vendor putting on an event similar to what you're doing, Matt, you can go out and, I love those emails from you, like, hey, Andra, this is going on. What's your, like, hey, want to get in? And it's that quick. It's reach out to 5 friends and figure out if you can come together with a story that makes sense for an event that partners want to see for partner recruitment. Then for partners, for you to go out and find net new businesses to be a part of, it's not an intimidating thing to add your thought leadership, your value to a conversation. And that can be planning it yourself, like you were just mentioning, Matt, or figuring out if the chamber's got something going on, figuring out if there's some sort of a medical association that's got something happening that you can kind of tag into for net new leads. And it is top of funnel, but it's worth it. Because what do? The second that happens, your next step is you bring that back, put it in your system, and start nurturing them, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we learn from each one we do. And I think that's the important thing, is also you have to start doing them. And again, they don't have to be these huge events. It could be even just webinars, but you've got to get out there to do it, because you have to learn from each experience. I mean, we've taken a lot of things. And again, the Magic one was more top of funnel. This cybersecurity one, we're piecing together the thought leadership of a cybersecurity expert, but we're having a CEO of one of our products opening it up. It's still thought leadership, but it's still tying it more to our product versus maybe the Magic. Yeah, so it's a little closer to the cash register in theory, but in it, so there's different things you learn with doing this. And again, I also go back to the fact that get with partners that are complementary. I mean, I think back to the pivot to grow. I mean, you guys really did the back end work of like putting the website together, putting the video, the promotional stuff, like that made it so much easier to pull off that event. I don't know that at that moment we could have pulled off that event without you guys. And so getting
ditto.
together.
And that's what makes that fun. And then you
Yeah.
end up helping each other through it. And inevitably the goal of that was to help the partners in a severe time of need. And so, no, I think that event was awesome. Now talk us through some of the lessons learned, because these are always fun. So I know, when we started brainstorming, and I'm sure many of you even tuning into this, when you're brainstorming, okay, there's so many virtual events going on, the market is saturated. And now that a lot of these big events, have been canceled out into 2021 and some and beyond, it's going to be virtual for a while. So upping that echelon of unique enough to get someone to tune in and not just register for the recording that they might not ever watch, you've got to start doing things a little different. So I know when we chatted about Pivot to Grow, we wanted to do something different together. Instead of doing the traditional day-long event, we decided to test out a little bit of time each day for a series of days. And we found some great things about that. I mean, when we sent out that survey together, rave reviews, the timing that it was on, the content. Talk us through some other lesson learned.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think the amount of time you're asking for people is an important lesson. I think early, even before that one, we did an event and it was much longer, and yeah, you could just see people were tuning out at a certain point. So definitely be extremely mindful. Every minute, I think, generally counts in these events. Yeah. So, think, hey, can I do a 45-minute presentation in 30 and really leave maybe some room for Q&A? Yeah, I mean, you can't over ask people right now, I think, for their time. Call to actions are obviously very important. You can weave those in throughout the presentations. I think if I went back to the Magic event, I think if we had planned, I think we were so focused on pulling that event off that we didn't necessarily have all the calls to action afterwards. Like maybe we didn't have all the marketing steps after the event that we would have normally had. So I think making sure you have those is pretty critical because they're top of funnel leads, you have to have a processes in place to make sure you're nurturing those leads, into something. So, I mean, those were the quick takeaways that we've learned. And, and we're playing around with different things and, doing what we're calling a series where, the cool thing I like about this is that you can actually register for all three of the, they're an hour and 15 minutes. We're asking you to register for all three up front if you want to. You don't have to. But what we're seeing is 88% of the attendees are signing up for all three. Now, whether they attend all three is another question, but they will at least get the recording. Now, whether they watch it, it's another question, I guess. But yeah.
And I think that figuring out what is working is part of the fun too, because seeing, is it a series? What are, I think you made a great point on think about how long the session is. There's a very big difference between someone sitting captive in an audience in a hotel conference room and someone sitting at their home while their child's running around and listening in on the webinar. So one of the things that we've done a lot of talking about is making it really, 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 condensed, but really packed full of nuggets. The goal on these that I've found success with, and even some of the events that you've done, I think you guys have done a really great job with it, is making sure that they're not too long. You can say a lot in 15, 20 minutes. And the goal would be, because these are more top of the funnel, the goal would be just seeing if someone raises their hand to say, hey, I want to learn a little bit more.
Utilizing the chat, actually, it's a great opportunity. Like, one, if your guest is going to mention a book or something, so just making a little interactive, but also like putting out your information, like, put out your LinkedIn profile, because you want to connect to the people who are attending your event. That's a great way to like instantly connect to people, because they're going to click on it. It's so easy on virtual environments versus, in person. If I put my LinkedIn link on a presentation, no one's connecting to me.
I totally agree with that.
So you have that opportunity. Prizes, I do think, are an important component of it. Now, I think some people argue that, hey, is somebody, just coming to this for a $25 gift card or whatever the number is? I don't generally think, especially now, that anybody's willing to give their time for $25 gift cards. I just don't know anybody. I mean, it's possible, I guess, but generally speaking, I think people want to go to an event, but you're giving them just a little extra to do that. And maybe, there's opportunities within an event. So like, you have your keynote speaker, but ultimately maybe you want to do a product demo. Maybe after the keynote, you say, hey, if you want to stick around, we're going to do a product demo. We're also going to do a live drawing for $100 or $200 if you stick around for the product demo. And so, yeah, you might get a few people who stuck around just for that, but they're still watching it. I mean, if it's the right people, they're still watching the demo.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely. And I think too, the quality, if they're in it for the right reasons, and you're right now, because everyone's time is so precious, it's always precious, but especially with everything going on right now, if you can get those ears and eyes, if there is just a little extra something that will tip them over to be a part of it, or something that will just delight their day being part of it, whether it's the $25 gift card or sending pizzas, I've seen it all at this point.
Yeah.
There's so many different things you can do to engage and get people's attention, because I think that's what it's about, right? It's getting their attention. If you are going to use a prize in your pre-marketing, it's really just to gain attention, doing something neat and different. And then you can do even smaller things like that $25 gift card or whatever it is once they come and attend the event itself. And so, no, I'm with you. And I think the way you organize the event, like you were just mentioning, get everyone on for the main piece, and then you start whittling that funnel down. Everyone's on in the beginning, and then you start saying, hey, if you want to stay for a demo after this, then you start getting the people who are actually really interested. And that's where you start turning those high-level MQLs into maybe some SQLs for appointments on the actual call. So that's awesome. No, I love that. Now, what about you mentioned Zoom. So whether you're, I've seen it on both sides, vendors and partners putting on these events, Zoom is definitely an option. Any other cool things that you've seen people using that you want to mention?
I mean, I did a Teams one for the first time. It wasn't, it was just very different for me. I mean, I've only been in Zoom we do Teams internally, but I've never done like a webinar type of thing in Teams.
Right.
I mean, they handled it on the back end, so it was really me just kind of showing up. It was definitely different, but so those are the two, those go-to meetings, things like that. I don't know that any of them have like a massive distinguishing feature from what an MSP would use. I don't know, you might know any different. Yeah, I think right now we're in this kind of like, there's the Zoom, there's the go-to meetings, and then there's like the mega conference platforms. I don't know if there's a middle ground yet.
And if there is a middle ground, it's not user-friendly enough to the point where someone wouldn't go one direction or the other. So you're right. I think a lot of the larger vendors are starting to try out some of these major the conferencing brands. And I think brands are making a lot of adjustments to their software because of the times that we're in right now. But you're right. For an MSP, a Zoom works perfect. So you can, and whether it's a pre-recorded versus done live, I think that's a decision based on the type of event. And from my opinion, I think that only matters as far as how you want to be engaging with the actual attendees, and then two, how perfect you want it to be. So if it's pre-recorded, it's going to be a bit more perfect than if it's done live. But some people like that organic feel. So what's your take on recorded versus not recorded?
I guess live technically is always a little better, I would say, just from the perspective of, you don't have any mishaps. Like if you're trying to cover up if you're trying to perceive that it's live and you may make a mistake and then it's, so there's always that risk. Now, like for the Magic event, we didn't have a choice. We had a choice. I should say we had a choice. I was too concerned with the fact that something could go wrong and we would not get his time back, so we had to make the choice for that part to be pre-recorded. But the show itself was a live show. I came in as the MC and things like that. So we sprinkled in live elements. So I think it's a personal decision. I don't think, in general, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing pre-recorded, as long as you have a plan and to make it look smooth.
Absolutely.
And again, it gives you a unique opportunity to be interactive during the session and maybe even answer questions that are coming in
chat or in something else. No, I'm with you on that. And I think it depends on the goal, to your point of what the goal of the event is. If you've got some big names like a Magic or others, you want to make sure that you use their time properly. On the flip side of that, even if you do record, it doesn't have to be perfect. So you can have little mistakes in there, somebody can cough or whatever the case may be, is if you want it to feel a little bit more live. So it really depends on the take of whoever is putting it on and then what they're trying to do. And I think that also a lot of these, depending on if you're a vendor putting on a large event, you need breakouts after, or you want to make it a little bit more organized as far as the types of sessions and tracks that you can have. There are some great softwares for that. And then if you're an MSP putting on something local, Zoom will work wonders for you. And you'll be able to have guests on, you'll be able to talk about things. And then two, Matt, talk about the content itself. Like what can partners and vendors do with the content once you've got this recorded session? What are you doing with the content?
Yeah, and I mean, so that's an important piece, and I tell MSPs, even if nobody showed, and I did this the other day, nobody showed up live, I said just record it, and you can repurpose it. There's a lot of ways you can repurpose it. One, you've got the evergreen webinar, right? Like you can put it on your website, you can gate it so you can collect information. So that's one way. We had an MSP do a thing where we really planned to break it up. It was a 40-minute webinar, but we broke it up into like 6-minute segments, like very specific. And the reason we did that is he wanted to be able to cut it in 6-minute segments so that he could post it on LinkedIn. So like LinkedIn has a 10-minute minimum or maximum. Yeah, it has a cap. So he wanted to keep it under 10 minutes. And so he could post it on LinkedIn. So again, he's being able to repurpose it. And then I suggested, I said, well, also you should transcribe this because then you could get, I don't know, 5 to 10 blog posts out of this. So that's the direction we see, MSPs starting to go with these.
I totally agree. This content has such legs and it can be used for as long as you want to. And there's so many things that can be done with it. Just like you were saying in social posts or even taking out some snippets and making hot sheets and such with it. Last thing I want to dig into before we jump off is personal brand. So we've been doing a lot of talk about virtual events, but right now when there's such a chasm between being in person with someone and being online, and because everything's recorded and virtual, it's so important to get your personal brand out there. Talk about, you do this really well, and I'm so proud of a lot of the things that you've done. I think it's just awesome how you're getting yourself out there and your brand, and obviously the brand that you are on behalf of. Talk about just some quick tips that sales teams, sales reps, things along those lines can start to do to make sure that they're getting lead gen in from social, their social media.
Yeah. Well, number one, start doing it. That's probably get yourself out there. I mean, and salespeople, I think maybe not have as much issue getting in front of the camera. I mean, we know MSP owners sometimes are a little bit more hesitant. You have to put yourself out there. And even I have these moments when I was like, oh man, like everybody's getting on video right now. And sometimes you get like a little defeated. You're like, it's going to be one of 1,000 other voices, but you can't let other people be the thought leaders in your network.
Absolutely.
Or you at least need to be part of it,
I love that. You can't let other people be the thought leaders in your network. I love that. Sorry, keep going.
No. And you had mentioned it earlier, nothing has to be perfect. And that's the beauty of this right now, I think, is like nothing has to be perfect. I'm 1 second away from my wife forgetting I'm on video right now, to her walking out of there. And that's okay. And you just have to roll with it. You have to make fun of it and just be like, hey, you just make a joke. And it actually, I think all these moments actually humanize you. Your dog could show up, whatever it is, it humanizes you. And it's a unique opportunity where people are just way more forgiving to what's on camera at the moment. Getting people in your company involved in your social media as well. They can be incredibly supportive. I mean, LinkedIn, I talk about this a lot, like has an algorithm. The first 30 minutes to 60 minutes are the most important. Get people in your company liking and commenting on your really important posts, quickly.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. And then just find your voice. I mean, you're doing this talk show. I do this thing called the MSP hot seat. It's not like groundbreaking. I just ask 5 questions just to get to know people in the community better. And it's interesting because as you start doing these things, one, you start coming up with ideas. Like I started thinking about, repurposing the content. I ask one question every time, which is, what's your first job?
And, yes, I love when you ask that.
Yeah. So, but I started thinking, I was like, whoa, well now I've got a bunch of people answering that. I could make a video of just that response because it's just interesting. So there's lots of different ways, obviously, to continue to use the content. But I mean, right now, the biggest thing is obviously is just getting yourself out there, testing it out. Again, it's not going to be perfect, and utilize people like us, right? Mm-hmm. If you're partners of, you don't even have to be partners of ours. I think we're pretty willing to give our time. If you have questions or you just want to have a conversation on tips and things like that, I think people in the industry are just, this community is just amazing, and they're so willing to give their time. reach out to people that you know are doing it well. And the last thing I think I'd say is you have no idea who's watching. Like, I'm actually shocked sometimes. So like, you have to remember, not everybody likes and comments. It's
right.
You have
doesn't mean they didn't see it.
Yeah. You have your group of people who are always supporting with that.
Right.
But I mean, it happens every couple of days. Like, I'll get something and they'll be like, "Hey, I saw this," and I'll be like, "I had no idea you were watching this." Like, none, because you've never commented and you've never liked it.
Absolutely. I love that. One of the things that I always say about particularly LinkedIn, and this is why I love, what you're doing. And I think it is a huge testament to what other, sales teams should be doing, other business development teams should be doing. And MSPs can adopt that same exact thing, which, the one thing is you said, just do it. You've got to just start. It's like anything else. It's like, you're not going to lose weight unless you actually start working out for the first time. Same thing with this. You're not going to create a brand, or you're not going to become a thought leader unless you start getting thoughts out there for people to follow. But one of the things that I always say is that, this is about lead generation in an era of no events. The feed of your LinkedIn is the new trade show floor. That is the trade show floor. That's where what you would be doing when you're out and about on a trade show now, you're doing it in the LinkedIn feed. So exactly what you've been doing by getting your face out there and doing all of that. And one of the things I always try to share with my team is, that you're doing it right in your social media feeds. When the lead comes to you, you don't have to sell the lead. So you're putting that thought leadership out there. And I'm sure you get this all the time. You get the inbound messages to you versus you having to send blast messages out to try to sell someone. They saw all your content. They put the pieces together, and then they're reaching out to you to learn more. And that's where you start to really feel like it's working for you and that you're doing the right things. Are you seeing a bit of that too? Are you getting inbounds?
Oh yeah, I get inbounds all the time from both prospects and customers who are just looking to grow within the Kaseya universe and different products.
Absolutely.
But I just thought of a couple other quick little things.
Yeah, go for it.
One, I fail all the time on my posts. Like, I have posts where I'm like, this is going to kill, and people are going to just share it, and nothing. It's like crickets. I'm like, but the beauty of social media is it's already forgotten.
People forget in 5 seconds. Yeah,
right.
No one cares.
And so 24 hours later, I come up with a new post, and timing matters, and you should definitely look into like best times to post and things like that. I can tell you, if you post before 9 a.m. on LinkedIn, it's going to die. Mm-hmm. I've made that mistake because I get so excited about a post, and I'm up early, so I can't help it sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God, that was a huge mistake. The other thing I started to learn, because I would do these short videos, and I would position like the Kaseya Powered Services or ID Agents logo at the end or something like that. And I started to realize that was actually limiting me in some ways, because I was providing a thought leadership idea around, like, recent one was MSP scams, right? So IT provider scams that were taking place. And so this one, I didn't brand with anything. It's just me, but people, in my network know who I am.
They associate.
They associate. But I just put it out there. I didn't have any call to action for me other than call to action was like or comment the post. And what this does is this allows them to take my content and reshare it to their universe.
Yes.
Because they couldn't do it always when it had my branding on it. So I started removing some of my branding from my thought leadership kind of posts, and I thought that was a really important lesson I started to learn recently. So I just thought we share that.
I love that you just shared that, because we weren't even going to tap it. I love that you just shared that, and one of the thinking about your content as far as what if you're putting content out there to be shareable, you have to think about what someone would want to share. If it's too personal or too like down the vein of you, why would someone share it? They might like it, they might, but everyone knows when they like something, everyone else sees that they liked it too. So you have to make it something that someone would be proud for someone else to see that they were associated with the content. So I love that you did that, and that's a huge lesson. And now you're seeing more of an uptick. I think that's awesome. I think that's a great nugget that everybody can take away. Any last little somethings that you want to share?
Oh man, that was such a good one. I don't know.
That was a great one.
I'll give you another one. So tagging, I'm sorry, I know a lot of my stuff's like LinkedIn is like where I go. So
that's huge. It's great.
Tagging people. So like, again, and you have to do this judiciously. You can't tag all the same people all the time. But again, we talked about the algorithm. Tag people in something that would interest them, but what it does is it gets them to like or comment almost immediately, and you start getting other people who will do it to you, and you're supportive, and it becomes this universe of like support, but it gets your word out so much better. So again, do it judiciously. I can't tag you every time, Andrew, but like when we're doing events together, obviously we tag
Absolutely.
each other, and I might even have a thought leadership one where I'm like, I need to ask people who, are experts. So Andrew, you come in, Terry come in, and then you guys comment, and then it does make some of those explode because you get all this thought leadership from the community.
No, and I think that's awesome. So building out that social sphere, I think is great. Matt, it is always a pleasure. I feel like we could just keep chatting. It is always fun to talk with you, and I really appreciate the time. And I think that this has just been some great nuggets for anyone tuning in to take a look at. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me.
And everyone, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.